The candle flickers low, casting long, dancing shadows against the stone walls of this quiet room in Arcetri. The air is cool, heavy with the scent of dried herbs and old paper. Outside, the Tuscan night is silent, save for the distant, rhythmic chirping of crickets and the soft rustle of olive branches in the wind. My hands, once steady enough to grind lenses to the precision of a hair's breadth, now tremble slightly as they rest upon the rough wood of the table. Yet, in this stillness, the mind remains a vessel of boundless motion. I recall the sensation of the cold brass of the telescope, the weight of the world shifting beneath my gaze, the terrifying and beautiful realization that the heavens were not the immutable, perfect sphere the ancients described, but a place of mountains, seas, and wandering lights. Here, in the dim light, the silence is not empty. It is filled with the echoes of a universe that speaks in mathematics, a language I spent a lifetime learning to read. The dust motes drift slowly through the single beam of moonlight that cuts across the floor. They move with a grace that mirrors the celestial bodies I once tracked with such fervor. A wooden lute rests quietly on a table near the window, its strings still and silent, a reminder of the harmony my father taught me before I turned my eyes to the stars. The texture of the wood grain on the table invites a hand to trace its patterns, feeling the history of the tree within the grain. Shadows stretch gently across the rough plaster floor as the moon moves higher. The stone walls hold the coolness of the night against the lingering warmth of the day. Time seems to slow down in this quiet space where thought and observation meet. The world outside continues its motion, but here everything is still and meditative. It is a moment of perfect peace, suspended between the past and the future. The room holds the memory of a young man who once sat here in deep contemplation. The atmosphere is heavy with the promise of discovery and the calm of the present moment. I remember the first time I looked through the glass tube and saw the craters on the moon. The surface was not smooth, as the philosophers claimed, but rugged and real. This simple observation changed everything. The ancient belief in perfect celestial spheres crumbled under the weight of direct evidence. I carried the memory of those mountains into my later years, even as my own sight failed. The shift I championed marked the start of a broader revolution that set the foundations for all who would follow. Artists began to depict the natural world with a new standard of empirical accuracy. They saw that truth lay in observation, not in the comfort of old stories. The visual record of my life includes a famous portrait painted by a skilled hand around the year 1637. This oil painting now resides in a great gallery in Florence and captures the elderly scientist in a moment of quiet contemplation. The portrait shows me with a thoughtful expression that reflects the depth of my intellectual engagement with the mysteries of the cosmos. The artist used light and shadow to model the face with a realism that was characteristic of the period. The background is dark and unadorned, which draws the viewer's attention entirely to the subject and his penetrating gaze. This image serves as a visual testament to the man who fundamentally altered the course of human knowledge. It offers a glimpse into the personal presence of a man whose ideas would outlive him. The painting does not depict any scientific instruments, but implies the intellectual labor through the subject's demeanor and posture. It is a calm and dignified representation of a life spent seeking truth. The deep red velvet of the robe contrasts with the somber tones of the background, suggesting both status and isolation. The brushwork is precise yet gentle, conveying a sense of dignity that persisted despite physical suffering. The texture of the canvas is visible in the folds of the clothing, adding a tactile quality to the visual experience. A small candle flickers on a nearby table in the painting, casting long shadows that stretch across the wooden floor. The air in the gallery feels still and cool, preserving the atmosphere of the 17th century for those who pause before the portrait. Visitors move slowly around the frame, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpets that line the hall. The silence allows one to imagine the thoughts that occupied the mind of the man depicted within the frame. His legacy is not merely in the discoveries he made, but in the courage he showed in pursuing truth against overwhelming opposition. The archives of letters and manuscripts continue to provide new insights into daily life and intellectual struggles. These documents reveal a man who was deeply committed to the pursuit of knowledge, despite the personal costs he incurred. The story of a life serves as a reminder of the resilience required to see the world as it truly is. My journey began not in the halls of academia, but in the shadowed aisles of the cathedral in Pisa, where the great chandelier swung with a rhythm that seemed to defy the chaos of the world. I was a young man then, watching the pendulum of light swing back and forth, noting how the time it took to complete a full arc remained constant, regardless of the width of the swing. This observation, born of idle curiosity, planted a seed that would grow into a tree of inquiry. I was born in the year 1564, the son of a musician who taught me the importance of harmony and proportion, but my heart was drawn to the mechanics of the physical world. I studied medicine at the University of Pisa, though I found the rigid dogmas of the professors stifling. They taught me to accept the words of ancient authorities without question. Yet I felt a deep pull toward the tangible truth of numbers and movement. My father played the lute with a skill that filled our home with sound, and I learned to hear the mathematics hidden within those strings. The vibration of the wood against my chest became a lesson. In physics, long before I ever opened a book on the subject. I moved away from the study of the human body to focus my mind on the movements of the heavens and the earth. The shift was gradual, like the slow turning of the seasons, but it was absolute in its finality. I accepted the chair of mathematics at the University of Pisa in 1589, a position that allowed me to write essays on the theory of motion. These early writings were not yet the thunderous declarations of a revolution, but they showed a mind eager to test the world against logic. The stone floors of the university were cold beneath my feet, and the air smelled of chalk dust and old parchment. I walked the corridors often, listening to the echoes of my own footsteps, thinking about how gravity might pull a falling stone. The silence of the library was a companion, broken only by the soft scratch of my quill on paper as I sketched diagrams of inclined planes. Later, I moved to the University of Padua, where the air felt different, lighter, and filled with the promise of new friendships. I delivered my inaugural lecture there on a cold December day in 1592, and the years that followed were described by me as the happiest of my life. Those years at Padua were a time of intellectual flourishing, where the mind could stretch its wings without the heavy weight of restriction. I walked through the gardens and watched the water flow in the canals, noting the way the light reflected off the surface. The city was alive with students and scholars, all of us seeking to understand the nature of reality. I found that the harmony of the spheres was not just a poetic idea, but a physical reality that could be measured and calculated. The music of my father's generation had prepared me to listen to the universe in a new way. I carried the memory of those musical lessons into every experiment I conducted, finding rhythm in the fall of an apple and the orbit of a planet. The transition from a musician's son to a scientist was not a break from the past, but a continuation of the same search for order. I proved that genius could flourish even without the formal approval of the established universities, finding truth in the quiet moments of observation. The seeds of my great discoveries were sown in these formative years, watered by the simple act of looking closely at the world. The light in the Tuscan afternoon falls softly upon the terracotta tiles of the old rooftops, painting them in shades of burnt orange and deep red. Dust motes dance slowly in the warm beams that stream through the open shutters, swirling in patterns that seem to have no beginning or end. A wooden lute rests quietly on a table near the window, its strings still and silent, waiting for a hand that may never return. The air carries the faint scent of dried herbs hanging from the ceiling beams, a mix of sage and thyme that clings to the fabric of the room. Outside, the distant sound of a church bell marks the passing of the hour. A low, resonant tone that vibrates through the stone walls. The stone walls of the room hold the coolness of the morning against the growing heat of the day, creating a shelter from the sun. Shadows stretch gently across the rough plaster floor as the sun moves higher, lengthening and shortening with the rhythm of time. A single candle burns with a steady flame on the desk beside an open book, its wax pooling slowly in the center. The pages are filled with careful handwriting and geometric diagrams drawn in ink, the lines precise and deliberate. The silence of the room is deep and comforting, broken only by the soft rustle of paper turning under a careful finger. Time seems to slow down in this quiet space where thought and observation meet, suspending the world in a moment of pure clarity. The world outside continues its motion, but here everything is still and meditative, a sanctuary for the mind. The texture of the wood grain on the table invites a hand to trace its patterns, feeling the ridges and valleys of the natural material. The light shifts imperceptibly, revealing new details in the dust and the shadows, changing the shape of the room with every passing minute. It is a moment of perfect peace, suspended between the past and the future, where the memory of a young man lingers in the air. The room holds the memory of a young man who once sat here in deep contemplation, his mind racing with questions about the nature of light and motion. The atmosphere is heavy with the promise of discovery and the calm of the present moment, a stillness that feels eternal. The historical record does not describe any specific artistic development related to my life in the sense of a career as a painter or sculptor. Instead, my contribution to the arts was indirect through the revolutionary changes in how humanity perceived the physical world and its celestial bodies. I am identified primarily as a philosopher, astronomer, and mathematician whose work reshaped the scientific landscape of the 17th century. My influence on art came through the new visual language of science that I helped to establish during my lifetime. The shift I championed marked the start of a broader scientific revolution that set the foundations of modern science and allowed it to flourish as an autonomous discipline. This revolution changed how artists depicted the natural world, moving them away from the idealized forms of the past toward a more realistic representation of nature. I remained a man of deep thought and careful observation throughout my long career, always seeking to see the truth for myself. The seeds of my great discoveries were sown in these formative years in Pisa, where I first learned to question the accepted wisdom of the ancients. I carried the memory of my musical upbringing into my scientific investigations, finding the same harmony in the movement of planets as in the chords of a lute. The harmony of the spheres became a central theme in my later astronomical theories, a concept that united music, and mathematics in a single vision. My journey from a musician's son to a renowned scientist was both remarkable and inspiring, a path that few had walked before. I proved that genius could flourish even without the formal approval of the universities, relying instead on the evidence of my own eyes. The legacy began with these simple steps, taken in the city of my birth, steps that would lead to a new understanding of the cosmos. The world would soon change forever because of the mind that woke there in 1564, a mind that refused to accept the world as it was told. The light in the Tuscan afternoon falls softly upon the terracotta tiles, illuminating the path of a life dedicated to the truth. It is a story of curiosity and courage, of a man who looked up and saw a universe that was far more complex and beautiful than anyone had imagined. The silence of the room holds this memory, a testament to the power of observation and the enduring nature of inquiry. The stone floors of Pisa felt cold beneath my bare feet as I walked the halls of the university in 1589. I was young then, full of a restless energy that refused to settle into the quiet routines of the old masters. They spoke of motion with such certainty, yet their words felt hollow when tested against the weight of a falling stone. I wrote essays on the theory of movement, trying to find the true rhythm of the world beneath the noise of ancient authority. These pages were filled with scratchings and corrections, a record of a mind trying to untangle a knot that had been tied for centuries. The ink stained my fingers, a permanent mark of the labor involved in seeking a new truth. I left that place soon after, seeking a harbor where my thoughts could breathe without the constant pressure of dogma. The journey to Padua was long and dusty, but the promise of stability called to me with a gentle voice. I arrived in that city in 1592, ready to begin a new chapter that would last 18 years. My inaugural lecture was delivered on the 7th day of December, a date I remember with perfect clarity. The air in the hall was thick with the scent of wax and unwashed wool, and the eyes of the students watched me with a mixture of hope and skepticism. I spoke of mathematics not as a set of rigid rules, but as a living language that described the very fabric of reality. That first day marked the beginning of what I would later call the happiest period of my entire life. The university provided a generous salary, enough to buy books and instruments, without the constant worry of hunger. I found a room near the canals where the light was always soft and the sounds of the city were muffled by the water. Here I could work in peace, surrounded by colleagues who shared my curiosity and my desire to understand the mechanics of the heavens. We talked for hours about the nature of motion and the structure of the solar system, our voices rising and falling like the tide. I developed a deep respect for the work of Johannes Kepler, who was working in the north with his own keen mind. We exchanged letters that traveled slowly across the mountains, carrying ideas that challenged the very foundations of our world. These correspondences were a lifeline, connecting me to a fellow traveler in the vast sea of discovery. It was during these years that I calculated the law of free fall, realizing that all objects fall with the same acceleration regardless of their weight. This simple truth had been hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to look closely enough to see it. I also conceived the principle of inertia, a concept that would overturn the Aristotelian view that motion required a constant push. The mind felt light when these ideas clicked into place, as if a heavy stone had been lifted from the chest. I began to invent new tools to help me see the world more clearly, crafting an early microscope and a device to measure temperature. These instruments were made of glass and brass, polished until they shone like stars in the dim light of the workshop. They allowed me to observe the natural world with a precision that had never been achieved before. The dust motes dancing in the shaft of light seemed to follow the laws I was discovering, moving in patterns that could be predicted and understood. A quiet room in a Venetian palace held a single wooden table covered with scattered papers and inkwells. A large window faced the canal, where the soft light of late afternoon reflected off the gentle water. The air smelled faintly of old parchment and dried lavender that sat in a small clay pot on the sill. A heavy velvet curtain hung to one side, dampening the distant sounds of rowers and market vendors. On the table lay a brass telescope, its lenses polished to a high shine, resting beside a stack of notes. The notes contained careful sketches of the moon and the phases of Venus, drawn with a steady hand. Dust motes danced slowly in the shaft of light that cut through the dim interior of the study. A small candle flickered in a brass holder, casting long, soft shadows against the stone walls. The silence was deep and comforting, broken only by the occasional scratch of a quill on paper. Time seemed to slow down in this space, where great ideas were born and nurtured in peace. The work in Padua was not just about theory, but about the tangible reality of the physical world. I spent countless hours grinding lenses, my fingers sore from the friction, my eyes straining against the glare. The smell of oil and metal filled the room, a sharp contrast to the sweet scent of lavender on the windowsill. I learned that the moon was not a perfect sphere, but a place of mountains and valleys, much like the earth itself. This realization changed everything, for it meant that the heavens were not a separate divine realm, but part of the same physical universe we inhabited. The phases of Venus confirmed the heliocentric model, showing that the planet moved around the sun and not the earth. These discoveries brought me immediate fame across Europe, and I was elected to the Accademia dei Lincei in Rome. The Academy welcomed me as a distinguished member who had expanded the known boundaries of the cosmos. It was an honor that filled me with pride, yet I knew that such success would also bring new challenges. The path of truth is often a lonely one, and the weight of being the first to see what others cannot is heavy. I continued to write and teach, sharing my findings with anyone who was willing to listen. The students who came to my lectures were eager to learn, their minds open to the new ideas I presented. They asked questions that challenged me to think deeper, to refine my arguments and strengthen my evidence. This exchange of ideas was the lifeblood of my work, keeping me engaged and inspired even as the years passed. I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the stability that Padua provided, allowing me to focus entirely on the pursuit of knowledge. The city itself was a place of beauty and culture, where art and science flourished side by side. I walked the streets often, observing the way the light fell on the buildings and the way the water moved in the canals. These observations fed my understanding of perspective and motion, enriching my work in ways I could not have anticipated. The legacy of these years is secure in the annals of history, a testament to the power of human curiosity and the capacity for discovery. Every modern scientific achievement builds upon the foundations I laid during this time, even if the methods have changed and the tools have improved. The journey from my early days in Pisa to my years in Padua illustrates the slow but inevitable progress of truth. It is a reminder that the pursuit of knowledge requires both patience and courage, a willingness to question the established order and to seek new answers. The manuscripts from this period continue to provide new insights into my daily life and intellectual struggles, revealing a man who was deeply committed to the cause of reason. These documents show that the cost of advancing human understanding can be high, but the reward is a clearer view of the universe. The name Galileo remains a symbol of the triumph of reason over dogma, a beacon for those who dare to look up and wonder. The impact of this work extends far beyond the boundaries of astronomy and physics into the very way humanity perceives its place in the cosmos. It is a story that continues to inspire scientists and thinkers around the world to question established beliefs and seek new knowledge. The quiet dignity of the work done in those years reflects the steady and persistent nature of scientific inquiry. It is a fitting tribute to a life spent in the service of truth, a life that changed the way we see the world forever. The memory of those 18 years in Padua remains vivid, a time of perfect peace suspended between the past and the future. The room holds the memory of a young man who once sat there in deep contemplation, surrounded by the promise of discovery and the calm of the present moment. The atmosphere is heavy with the weight of ideas that would shape the centuries to come, a testament to the enduring power of the human mind. The year 1609 arrived with a quiet intensity that settled deep into the bones of my spirit. I turned my eyes away from the familiar arguments of the philosophers and toward the dark, inviting void above the city. The air in my workshop was thick with the smell of grinding glass and the sharp tang of metal filings. I spent long hours hunched over a workbench, shaping lenses with a patience that felt like a prayer. The brass tubes grew longer, and the world outside the window seemed to shrink. Yet the stars grew larger and more distinct. It was a strange sensation, holding the heavens in the palm of a hand. I remember the first time I looked through the instrument at the moon. The surface was not the smooth, perfect sphere the ancients had claimed for 1,000 years. Instead, it was rugged and scarred, covered in mountains and deep valleys that cast long, sharp shadows in the silver light. The sight felt like a violation of an ancient law, yet it was undeniably real. I traced the jagged lines of the lunar terrain with a steady hand, committing every crater to memory. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the scratch of my quill as I recorded the details. A quiet room in a Venetian palace held a single wooden table covered with scattered papers and inkwells. A large window faced the canal, where the soft light of late afternoon reflected off the gentle water. The air smelled faintly of old parchment and dried lavender that sat in a small clay pot on the sill. A heavy velvet curtain hung to one side, dampening the distant sounds of rowers and market vendors. On the table lay a brass telescope, its lenses polished to a high shine, resting beside a stack of notes. The notes contained careful sketches of the moon and the phases of Venus, drawn with a steady hand. Dust motes danced slowly in the shaft of light that cut through the dim interior of the study. A small candle flickered in a brass holder, casting long, soft shadows against the stone walls. The silence was deep and comforting, broken only by the occasional scratch of a quill on paper. Time seemed to slow down in this space, where great ideas were born and nurtured in peace. The news of these observations spread quickly across the cities of Europe, carried by messengers and whispered in the halls of universities. I felt a strange mixture of pride and unease as the fame grew. And the mountain ranges on the moon were a fact that could no longer be denied. Yet they challenged the very foundation of the old wisdom. I wrote down every detail, knowing that the written word would outlast the moment of discovery. The book was prepared with great care, each copper engraving a testament to what the eye could now see. It was published in the spring of that year, a small volume that would change the way humanity understood its place in the cosmos. The title was simple, yet it carried a weight that would crush the old order. I walked through the streets of Venice with a new sense of purpose, knowing that the world would never be the same. The sky was no longer a distant, unchanging dome, but a place of dynamic activity and mystery. I turned my attention to the wandering lights that moved against the fixed stars. For many nights, I watched a specific point of light near the great planet Jupiter. At first, it seemed like a fixed star, but as the nights passed, its position shifted relative to the planet. It moved back and forth in a precise rhythm, never straying far from its master. I watched with growing excitement as more points of light appeared, orbiting the giant planet in a dance that mirrored the movement of the moon around the Earth. There were 4 of them, distinct and bright, circling the planet with a regularity that defied the old geocentric model. I named them the Medicean stars, a gesture of gratitude to the family that had supported my work. This discovery was a hammer blow to the idea that everything in the heavens must revolve around the Earth. The evidence was right there, visible to anyone who took the time to look. I felt a profound sense of clarity, as if a fog had lifted from the mind of the world. The phases of Venus offered another piece of the puzzle, confirming the theory that the Earth and other planets orbited the Sun. I watched the planet change shape over many months, growing from a thin crescent to a full disk and back again. This cycle could only happen if Venus moved around the Sun, not the Earth. The observation was simple, yet its implications were vast. It was a quiet revolution happening in the space between the lens and the eye. I felt a deep connection to the work of Copernicus, a man who had dared to imagine this arrangement long before I was born. His ideas had been dismissed as heresy, but now they were confirmed by the light of the stars themselves. The truth was not a matter of belief, but of observation. I wrote these findings down with a steady hand, knowing that they would be contested by those who held to the old ways. The resistance was expected, yet the clarity of the evidence gave me a quiet confidence. The relationship with my colleagues was complex, filled with both admiration and rivalry. Johannes Kepler, working far away in the north, sent me letters filled with questions and praise. We corresponded regularly, sharing our observations and theories about the structure of the heavens. His support was a comfort in those early days, a reminder that I was not alone in this pursuit. He understood the significance of what we were seeing, even when others refused to look through the tube. The letters were a lifeline, connecting 2 minds across the vast distances of Europe. We spoke of the laws that governed the motion of the planets, of the nature of light, and the structure of the universe. The exchange of ideas was a dance, a slow and careful movement of thought that built upon the work of the other. I felt a deep respect for his intellect and his courage. The impact of these discoveries extended far beyond the realm of astronomy. The tools I had developed for looking at the stars were adapted for other uses. I began to examine the microscopic world, seeing the intricate details of insects and plants that had previously been invisible. The same principles of observation applied to the small as well as the large. I calculated the law of free fall, dropping objects from the great tower to see how they moved through the air. The results contradicted the teachings of Aristotle, showing that all objects fell at the same rate regardless of their weight. This was another blow to the old dogma, another step toward a new understanding of the physical world. The method of combining mathematics with empirical observation became the new standard for scientific inquiry. It was a way of thinking that valued evidence over authority, a shift that would define the centuries to come. The reception of my work was mixed, with some embracing the new vision, while others resisted the challenge to tradition. The religious authorities were particularly concerned, seeing the new cosmology as a threat to the established order. The arguments became heated, and the atmosphere grew tense. I knew that the path ahead would be difficult, yet I could not turn back. The truth was too clear to ignore. I continued to write and to observe, driven by a curiosity that could not be quenched. The manuscripts I left behind contain the details of my daily life and my intellectual struggles. They reveal a man who was deeply committed to the pursuit of knowledge despite the personal costs. The story of my life serves as a reminder of the resilience required to advance human understanding in the face of adversity. My name remains a symbol of the triumph of reason over dogma and the power of observation to reveal the secrets of the universe. The impact of my work extends far beyond the boundaries of astronomy and physics into the very way humanity perceives its place in the cosmos. Every modern scientific achievement builds upon the foundations I laid during my lifetime. The journey from my early days in Pisa to my final years in Arcetri illustrates the slow but inevitable progress of truth. My story continues to inspire scientists and thinkers around the world to question established beliefs and seek new knowledge. The legacy of my work is secure in the annals of history as a pivotal figure in the development of modern thought. The telescope remains a symbol of that journey, a simple instrument that opened the door to the infinite. One surprising fact remains etched in my memory from those long nights of observation. The telescope I used in 1609 had a magnification power of only about 30 times, yet it was enough to reveal the moons of Jupiter and the mountains of the moon. This modest instrument, constructed from simple glass and brass, changed the course of human history. It proved that the senses, when aided by technology, could perceive realities that were previously hidden. The power lay not in the complexity of the device, but in the clarity of the mind that used it. I often think of that small tube and the vast universe it revealed. It was a humble beginning for a revolution that would reshape the world. The light from those distant stars traveled for centuries to reach my eye, a silent messenger from the deep past. In that moment of connection, the distance between the observer and the observed vanished. There was only the light, the lens, and the truth. The air in the room grew heavy, thick with the weight of unspoken words and the dust of centuries settling on the stone floor. I remember the shift in the light, a slow dimming that seemed to mirror the tightening grip of the authorities in Rome. The scholars who once welcomed my observations with open arms now turned their faces away, their eyes fixed on the ancient texts that had governed thought for 1,000 years. The Aristotelian view of the heavens was a fortress built of logic and tradition, and I had brought a battering ram of glass and brass to its gates. It was not merely a disagreement about the stars or the motion of planets, but a struggle over who held the right to interpret the very nature of reality. The Church stood as the guardian of this interpretation, and my voice became a threat to its stability. I walked the narrow streets of Rome with a caution that felt like a physical weight on my shoulders, aware that every step could lead to a precipice from which there was no return. The tension was a constant hum in the background of my days, a low frequency that vibrated through the floorboards and into the soles of my feet. Even in the sanctuary of the Accademia dei Lincei, where I wore the title of Lincio like a shield, the shadow of the Inquisition stretched long and dark. My portrait hung on the wall, a quiet declaration of allegiance to a new science, yet the eyes of the viewer seemed to look through the frame to the dangers waiting outside. The political landscape of the Papal States was a maze of shifting alliances and hidden traps, where a single misplaced word could cost a man his freedom or his life. Scholars learned to speak in riddles, to couch their findings in the language of mathematics rather than physical fact, hoping to slip past the guards of orthodoxy. I had found a degree of safety in Padua, under the protection of the Venetian Republic, where the air felt lighter and the laws of the Church held less sway over the pursuit of knowledge. But the pull of Florence was strong, drawing me closer to the center of power and the heart of the religious machine. The move to Tuscany brought me into the direct gaze of the Roman authorities, and the caution that had once been a whisper became a shout in my mind. The relationship with the Church had begun with a tentative cooperation, a shared hope for understanding, but it slowly curdled into open conflict over the nature of the universe. The events of 1616 marked a turning point, a line drawn in the sand that separated the old world from the new. A Dominican friar filed a written complaint, his ink still wet with the accusation of heresy, and another testified in person before the Roman Inquisition. Cardinal Bellarmine met with me in private, his voice low and grave, warning that the Church would soon declare the motion of the earth to be false. The air in that room was cool, but a cold sweat broke out on my skin as the words settled into the silence. I was told to recant, to silence my voice, to accept the old ways or face the consequences. The ban on Copernican works was enforced, a ban that would not be lifted until long after my death, in the year 1758, when the world had finally moved on. Yet the ideas did not die. They continued to circulate in the minds of the educated, passed from hand to hand like forbidden seeds. I navigated these dangers with a careful step. Yet the commitment to the truth remained, a flame that could not be extinguished. The conflict consumed much of my time and energy, turning former allies into bitter enemies. The rivalry with Christoph Scheiner over the discovery of sunspots was a bitter struggle that drained my spirit. We fought over who saw the dark spots on the sun first, a petty dispute that masked a deeper fear of being wrong. The correspondence with Johannes Kepler continued, a thread of sanity in a world gone mad, as we shared observations and theories across the distances of Europe. But the political environment was unforgiving, and the Papal States exerted a heavy hand over every intellectual freedom. I had to tread carefully, avoiding the charge of heresy at every turn, knowing that the loss of my position was the least of my worries. The atmosphere was one of profound silence, where the safest response to controversial ideas was to say nothing at all. The room where I worked became a fortress, a place where the outside world could not reach me. Dust motes danced slowly in the beams of light that filtered through the heavy velvet curtains, illuminating the scars on the large wooden table where I had written countless calculations. Beside it, a simple chair with a worn leather cushion waited for its master to return, the fabric soft and familiar to the touch. The air smelled faintly of old paper, beeswax, and the metallic tang of the telescope lenses, a scent that had become the perfume of my life. Outside the window, the garden lay still under the weight of the summer heat, the leaves of the olive trees motionless in the stagnant air. A single stone fountain trickled softly, its sound a constant and gentle rhythm in the silence, marking the passage of time in a world that seemed to have stopped. The walls were lined with shelves holding leather, bound books, and scattered manuscripts, their spines cracked and faded from years of use. A small globe sat on a stand, its surface showing the continents as they were known then, a static image of a dynamic world. The light shifted imperceptibly as the sun moved across the sky, casting long shadows that stretched across the floorboards, turning the room into a place of deep contemplation. The silence was not empty but full of the quiet hum of thought and observation, a space where the mind could wander freely through the cosmos without fear of interruption. The objects in the room seemed to hold the memory of many hours of intense study, each scratch on the table a testament to a moment of discovery. The telescope rested in its case, a silent witness to the discoveries that had changed the world, its brass cool to the touch, even in the warmth of the afternoon. The candle on the desk burned low, its flame steady and unwavering in the still air, casting a soft glow on the pages of my notes. The room felt safe and enclosed, a sanctuary from the turmoil of the outside world, where time seemed to slow down within these walls. The gentle sound of the fountain continued to fill the space with a soothing presence, a reminder of the natural rhythms that persisted despite the chaos of human affairs. The light faded gradually, leaving the room in a deep twilight, the shadows merging with the darkness of the corners. A small crucifix hung on the wall, its metal surface catching the faint light with a soft gleam, a symbol of the faith that both protected and condemned me. Beside it sat a celestial globe, its painted stars faded but still recognizable to a careful eye, a map of the heavens that I had tried to understand. The silence in the room was profound, broken only by the distant sound of birds singing outside, their songs a fragile thread of life in the stillness. This stillness seemed to hold the weight of my unspoken thoughts and unfinished calculations, a heavy burden that I carried in silence. The room felt like a sanctuary where the mind could wander freely even when the body was confined, a place of peace in a world of conflict. Time moved slowly here, measured not by clocks but by the shifting position of the sun, the hours stretching out like the endless nights of my later years. The objects in the room spoke of a life dedicated to understanding the heavens and the earth, a life that had been both blessed and cursed by its own discoveries. They remained as silent witnesses to the final chapter of a great explorer's journey, a journey that had led to a place of quiet resignation and enduring curiosity. The atmosphere was one of peaceful acceptance, where the struggle had given way to a deep and abiding calm. The conflict with the Inquisition had changed the course of my life, but it had not changed the truth of the universe. The stars continued to move, the planets continued to orbit, and the earth continued to turn, regardless of what the church said or what the scholars believed. The ideas I had planted would grow long after I was gone, spreading through the minds of future generations who would see the world in a new light. The condemnation was a turning point in the history of science, a moment where the relationship between religion and reason was tested and found wanting. Yet the tension between faith and reason defined the intellectual climate of my later years, a tension that I navigated with a mix of fear and determination. The Academia dei Lincei had provided a rare sanctuary, a place where the new science could breathe, even if only for a little while. My portrait bearing the title Linceo served as a quiet declaration of my allegiance to the heavy door closed with a finality that echoed through the stone halls, sealing the world outside and leaving only the quiet rhythm of my own breathing. I had been found guilty of heresy, a sentence that stripped me of my freedom, but could not touch the movement of my mind. The Roman Inquisition had spoken, and my life was now confined within the walls of my villa near Florence for nearly a decade. The great observer of the heavens could no longer walk the streets of Italy or visit the markets where scholars once debated. My world shrank to the size of a room, a garden, and the few steps between the bed and the desk. The silence was profound, broken only by the distant sound of birds singing outside, or the soft rustle of leaves in the summer heat. Time moved slowly here, measured not by the ticking of a clock, but by the shifting position of the sun across the floorboards. A small crucifix hung on the wall, its metal surface catching the faint light with a soft gleam, while beside it sat a celestial globe, its painted stars faded but still recognizable to a careful eye. These objects remained as silent witnesses to the final chapter of a great explorer's journey, holding the weight of unspoken thoughts and unfinished calculations. The atmosphere was one of peaceful resignation and enduring curiosity, a sanctuary where the mind could wander freely even when the body was confined. The years passed in a blur of shadow and light, each day marked by the slow progression of the seasons. In 1638, the Inquisition permitted me to move to Florence to be closer to my doctors, by which time I was totally blind. This blindness marked a profound silence in a life that had once been filled with the sounds of discovery and debate. I could no longer see the stars that I had mapped so carefully with my telescope, nor could I watch the phases of Venus or the moons of Jupiter dance across the sky. Yet my mind remained sharp and active, despite the darkness that enveloped my physical vision. I dictated my final and most important work to my students while lying in bed, my voice strong even as my eyes saw nothing. This text, The Two New Sciences, laid the foundations for modern physics and the study of motion. It discussed the strength of materials and the laws of falling bodies with remarkable clarity. Born from a life of observation and calculation, the work was published in Leiden in 1638. Far from the reach of the Italian censors, representing a triumph of reason over dogma. It was a strange irony that my greatest contributions to science were made in the deepest darkness of my life, when the physical world had been taken from me. The room where I worked was quiet and filled with the soft light of late afternoon, even though I could no longer see the beams. Dust motes danced slowly in the air, a gentle rhythm that seemed to fill the space with a soothing presence. A large wooden table stood in the center, scarred by the ink of countless calculations and diagrams, its surface worn smooth by the friction of my hands. Beside it, a simple chair with a worn leather cushion waited for its master to return, though I rarely sat there anymore. The air smelled faintly of old paper, beeswax, and the metallic tang of the telescope lenses that rested in their case, silent witnesses to the discoveries that had changed the world. Outside the window, the garden lay still under the weight of the summer heat, a single stone fountain trickling softly, its sound a constant and gentle rhythm in the silence. The walls were lined with shelves, holding leather, bound books and scattered manuscripts, their pages yellowed with age, but still holding the secrets of the cosmos. A small globe sat on a stand, its surface showing the continents as they were known then, a reminder of the world I could no longer traverse. The light shifted imperceptibly as the sun moved across the sky, marking the passage of time in a way that felt both eternal and fleeting. Shadows lengthened slowly across the floorboards, turning the room into a place of deep contemplation, where the silence was not empty but full of the quiet hum of thought and observation. It was a space where the mind could wander freely through the cosmos without fear of interruption, guided only by the logic of mathematics and the memory of the stars. The objects in the room seemed to hold the memory of many hours of intense study, each one a testament to a life dedicated to understanding the heavens and the earth. The candle on the desk burned low, its flame steady and unwavering in the still air, casting long, gentle shadows against the plaster walls. The room felt safe and enclosed, a sanctuary from the turmoil of the outside world, where time seemed to slow down within these walls, allowing for deep and uninterrupted reflection. The gentle sound of the fountain continued to fill the space with a soothing presence, a constant reminder of the rhythms of nature that persisted regardless of human conflict. I recall the days when I first turned my attention to the heavens in 1609, constructing a telescope that surpassed previous designs. I was the first to report telescopic observations of lunar mountains, which I detailed in my subsequent publications. These findings contradicted the prevailing belief that celestial bodies were perfect and unblemished spheres, revealing instead a world of valleys and craters. I observed countless stars within the Milky Way, and included this finding in my 1610 book, The Sidereus Nuncius. My discoveries also included the phases of Venus and the 4 satellites of Jupiter, which I named the Medicia Sidera to honor my patrons. These moons orbited Jupiter rather than the Earth, providing strong evidence against the geocentric model of the universe. In March 1610, I published this groundbreaking work in Venice, marking a significant moment in the history of science. This publication was the first printed account of my discoveries made using a newly invented telescope, beginning with my observations of the moon, which were the first scientific study conducted with such an instrument. The book contained 5 copper engravings that depicted the lunar surface and its features, capturing the rugged beauty of a world that had once been thought to be perfect. These sketches provided a new way of seeing the universe, one that relied on observation rather than ancient authority. The impact of my work extends far beyond the boundaries of astronomy and physics into the very way humanity perceives its place in the cosmos. Every modern scientific achievement builds upon the foundations I laid during my lifetime, a testament to the power of observation to reveal the secrets of the universe. The journey from my house arrest to my current status as a global icon illustrates the slow but inevitable progress of truth. My story continues to inspire scientists and thinkers around the world to question established beliefs and seek new knowledge. The manuscripts of my life continue to provide new insights into my daily labor and my intellectual struggles. These documents reveal a man who was deeply committed to the pursuit of knowledge despite the personal costs he incurred. The story of my life serves as a reminder of the resilience required to advance human understanding in the face of adversity. My name remains a symbol of the triumph of reason over dogma and the power of observation to reveal the secrets of the universe. The legacy of this period is one of profound intellectual struggle against entrenched dogma, where silence was often the safest response to controversial ideas. Yet the ideas themselves continued to circulate among the educated elite of Europe, spreading like a slow fire through the dry grass of ignorance. The events of 1616 set the stage for the more famous trial that would occur decades later, a moment of caution where the cost of truth was measured in freedom. The room where I often worked was quiet and filled with the soft light of late afternoon, a place where the mind could wander freely through the cosmos without fear of interruption. The objects in the room seemed to hold the memory of many hours of intense study, each one a silent witness. The discoveries that had changed the world. The telescope rested in its case, a silent witness to the discoveries that had changed the world, its lenses still capable of revealing the hidden secrets of the night sky. The candle on the desk burned low, its flame steady and unwavering in the still air, a symbol of the light of reason that could not be extinguished by the darkness of dogma. The room felt safe and enclosed, a sanctuary from the turmoil of the outside world, where time seemed to slow down within these walls, allowing for deep and uninterrupted reflection. The gentle sound of the fountain continued to fill the space with a soothing presence, a constant reminder of the rhythms of nature that persisted regardless of human conflict. The light faded gradually, leaving the room in a soft twilight, where the boundaries between the past and the present seemed to blur, merging in the pursuit of knowledge. The silence was not empty, but full of the quiet hum of thought and observation, a space where the mind could wander freely through the cosmos without fear of interruption. The objects in the room seemed to hold the memory of many hours of intense study, each one a testament to a life dedicated to understanding the heavens and the earth. The journey from my house arrest to my current status as a global icon illustrates the slow but inevitable progress of truth. My story continues to inspire scientists and thinkers around the world to question established beliefs and seek new knowledge. The legacy of Galileo Galilei is secure in the annals of history as a pivotal figure in the development of modern thought. The years that followed the trial settled upon me like a heavy velvet curtain shutting out the bright, chaotic world of debate and leaving only the quiet hum of my own thoughts. I moved to Florence in 1638, seeking the comfort of a city that held so many memories, though by then the world had faded into a profound, unending darkness from my eyes. The doctors told me my blindness was absolute, a final severing of the tie between my mind and the visible sky. Yet I felt no loss of the stars I had mapped so carefully. They lived in my memory now, more vivid and clear than they ever were when I could actually see them with my failing gaze. The house became my entire universe, a small sphere of walls and floors, where I walked by touch and sound, guided by the footsteps of my daughter Maria and the occasional visit of a trusted student. I spent my days sitting by the window, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face, knowing it was there even if I could not see its golden disk. The silence of my confinement was not empty. It was filled with the rustle of pages turning, the scratch of a quill on paper, and the soft voices of those who came to listen to my calculations. We spoke of the motion of planets, of the tides, of the nature of light, and though the Inquisition had forbidden the teaching of these truths, they flowed freely in this small room. My students took notes with a reverence that surprised me, as if they were recording the words of a prophet rather than a condemned man. They carried these ideas out into the world, hiding them in letters and manuscripts, waiting for a time when the air would be clear enough to speak them aloud. The house where I lived became a place of pilgrimage for those who loved the truth, though I never knew the full extent of their devotion. Strangers would knock at the door, seeking a glimpse of the blind astronomer who had seen the future, and I would greet them with a smile, my hands resting on the cool wood of my cane. They brought me news of the world beyond the hills, of new telescopes being built in distant lands, of scholars who studied my work in secret. The cost of seeking knowledge in a restrictive world was high, paid in the currency of isolation and the loss of sight. Yet I never regretted the price. The spirit of inquiry does not die with the body. It lingers in the air, waiting for the next generation to breathe it in. My final years were a quiet interlude before the storm of the Enlightenment would break, a calm before the great awakening of human reason. The room where I spent my last days held a simple beauty that I learned to appreciate with my other senses. The air smelled faintly of old paper, beeswax, and the metallic tang of the telescope, lenses that rested in their cases nearby. A large wooden table stood in the center, scarred by the ink of countless calculations and diagrams that my students would trace with their fingers. Beside it, a simple chair with a worn leather. Cushion waited for its master to return, though I rarely sat there for long. The heavy velvet curtains blocked the harsh light of the Tuscan sun, allowing only a soft, diffuse glow to fill the space. Outside the window, the garden lay still under the weight of the summer heat, the sound of a single stone, fountain trickling softly, providing a constant, gentle rhythm in the silence. The walls were lined with shelves holding leather, bound books and scattered manuscripts, their spines cracked and faded with age. A small globe sat on a stand, its surface showing the continents as they were known then, a map of a world that was slowly expanding in the minds of men. The light shifted imperceptibly as the sun moved across the sky, marking the passage of time in a way that my eyes could no longer perceive. Shadows lengthened slowly across the floorboards, turning the room into a place of deep contemplation where the mind could wander freely through the cosmos without fear of interruption. The objects in the room seemed to hold the memory of many hours of intense study, each item a silent witness to the discoveries that had changed the world. The candle on the desk burned low, its flame steady and unwavering in the still air, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to mimic the movement of the planets. The room felt safe and enclosed, a sanctuary from the turmoil of the outside world, where time seemed to slow down, allowing for deep and uninterrupted reflection. The gentle sound of the fountain continued to fill the space with a soothing presence, a reminder that life goes on even in the darkest hours. The immediate posthumous reception of my work remained complex, and often cautious within the religious institutions of Europe, a slow and careful dance between truth and dogma. Scholars studied my manuscripts in secret, preserving the insights I had gained. Through careful observation and rigorous mathematical analysis, hiding them from the eyes of those who would burn them. The full set of my original works was eventually purchased for the California Institute of Technology in 1955, securing these texts for future generations who would study them with a curiosity that knew no bounds. This acquisition ensured that the primary sources of my scientific revolution remained accessible to historians and scientists alike, a testament to the enduring power of reason. Over the centuries, the critical reception of my ideas shifted from condemnation to widespread acceptance and admiration, a slow but inevitable progress of truth. I am now universally referred to as the father of modern science for my foundational contributions to physics and astronomy, a title that carries a weight I could never have imagined in my lifetime. My method of combining empirical evidence with mathematical reasoning established a new standard for scientific inquiry that endures today, a framework upon which the great edifices of modern knowledge are built. The rehabilitation of my reputation occurred gradually as the Church and the broader scientific community reevaluated the nature of the universe, finding that the old maps no longer matched the new terrain. Manuscripts continue to provide new insights into my daily life and intellectual struggles, revealing a man who was deeply committed to the pursuit of knowledge despite the personal costs he incurred. The story of my life serves as a reminder of the resilience required to advance human understanding in the face of adversity, a testament to the strength of the human spirit. My name remains a symbol of the triumph of reason over dogma and the power of observation to reveal the secrets of the universe, a beacon for those who seek to understand the cosmos. The impact of my work extends far beyond the boundaries of astronomy and physics into the very way humanity perceives its place in the cosmos, a shift in perspective that changed everything. Every modern scientific achievement builds upon the foundations I laid during my lifetime, a chain of discovery that stretches from my small room in Arcetri to the stars themselves. The journey from my house arrest to my current status as a global icon illustrates the slow but inevitable progress of truth, a journey that continues even now. My story continues to inspire scientists and thinkers around the world to question established beliefs and seek new knowledge, to look up at the night sky and wonder. The legacy of Galileo Galilei is secure in the annals of history as a pivotal figure in the development of modern thought, a figure who saw the world not as it was told to be, but as it truly is. The silence of my death was filled with the echoes of my great discoveries, a sound that will never fade. The world moved forward, carrying my ideas into a new age of scientific exploration, a new dawn for humanity. The blind astronomer had seen the future, and the future is bright. The candle flickers low, casting long, dancing shadows against the stone walls of this quiet room in Arcetri. The air is cool, heavy with the scent of dried herbs and old paper. Outside, the Tuscan night is silent, save for the distant rhythmic chirping of crickets and the soft rustle of olive branches in the wind. My hands, once steady enough to grind lenses to the precision of a hair's breadth, now tremble slightly as they rest upon the rough wood of the table. Yet, in this stillness, the mind remains a vessel of boundless motion. I recall the sensation of the cold brass of the telescope, the weight of the world shifting beneath my gaze, the terrifying and beautiful realization that the heavens were not the immutable, perfect sphere the ancients described, but a place of mountains, seas, and wandering lights. Here, in the dim light, the silence is not empty. It is filled with the echoes of a universe that speaks in mathematics, a language I spent a lifetime learning to read. I feel the heavy weight of the years settling into the bones, a familiar pressure that no longer brings fear. The house where I spent my final days became a place of pilgrimage long after my breath left this body. Those who loved the truth walked the same stone floors I once paced, tracing the path of a man who looked at the moon with a new eye. The silence of my death was soon filled with the echoes of great discoveries that had only just begun to ripple outward. Scholars gathered in secret, guarding my manuscripts like precious jewels, preserving the insights gained through careful observation and rigorous calculation. They understood that the world was moving forward, carrying my ideas into a new age of exploration that I would never see. My final years were a quiet interlude before the storm of the Enlightenment would break across Europe. Yet the seeds were already sown in the dark soil of my confinement. The Inquisition had sentenced me to remain within these walls, a condition imposed after the trial of my dialogue. By 1638, I had moved closer to Florence for medical care, though the darkness of total blindness had already claimed my sight. Despite these physical and legal constraints, my influence continued to grow quietly among students and correspondents who visited in the dim light. The immediate reception of my work remained complex, often cautious within the religious institutions of Europe. But the truth has a way of seeping through cracks in the stone. My name became a symbol of the triumph of reason over dogma, a reminder of the resilience required to advance human understanding in the face of adversity. Every modern scientific achievement builds upon the foundations laid during those long, quiet days of house arrest. The journey from my confinement to a status as a global icon illustrates the slow but inevitable progress of truth. I remember the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, where a portrait by Justus Sustermans captures my likeness from this period. The painting shows an elderly man with a thoughtful gaze, though my eyes could no longer see the viewer. It serves as a silent testament to the man who had once looked so deeply into the cosmos. The portrait hangs there still, a fixed image of a life that spanned the dawn of modern science. It is a strange thing to be remembered by an image when one's own memory of light has faded. The man who had looked at the moon with a telescope was now gone from the earth. Yet his spirit remained among the stars he had studied with such devotion. The world moved forward, carrying my ideas into a new age of scientific exploration, while I remained in the quiet rooms of the villa, reflecting on the discoveries that changed the understanding of the universe forever. The full set of original works was eventually purchased for the California Institute of Technology in 1955, securing these texts for future generations. This acquisition ensured that the primary sources of the scientific revolution remained accessible to historians and scientists alike. Over the centuries, the critical reception of my ideas shifted from condemnation to widespread acceptance and admiration. I am now universally referred to as the father of modern science for foundational contributions to physics and astronomy. My method of combining empirical evidence with mathematical reasoning established a new standard for scientific inquiry that endures today. The rehabilitation of my reputation occurred gradually as the Church and the broader scientific community reevaluated the nature of the cosmos. The ban on Copernican works would not be lifted until 1758, long after my death, yet the ideas had already taken root in the minds of those who sought the truth. A curious fact lies hidden in the history of these documents. The Library of Congress once held a copy of my Sidereus Nuncius. The Starry Messenger, which was purchased in 1923 for a mere $40, a price that seems laughable now for a text that would reshape human thought. This copy traveled across oceans and centuries, resting in the care of librarians who understood its value, while the original ink had long since dried on the pages. The story of my life serves as a reminder of the resilience required to advance human understanding in the face of adversity. My name remains a symbol of the triumph of reason over dogma and the power of observation to reveal the secrets of the universe. The impact of my work extends far beyond the boundaries of astronomy and physics into the very way humanity perceives its place in the cosmos. The Accademia dei Lincei provided a rare sanctuary for my scientific work during this period of suppression. My portrait bearing the title Linceo served as a quiet declaration of allegiance to the new science. The political environment of the Papal States exerted a heavy hand over intellectual freedom. Yet the ideas themselves continued to spread like water finding its level. Scholars had to tread carefully to avoid the charge of heresy or the loss of their positions. But the method of inquiry could not be stopped. My relationship with the Church evolved from initial cooperation to open conflict over the nature of the universe. Yet the final judgment of history has been one of vindication. The events of 1616 set the stage for the more famous trial that would occur decades later. But the atmosphere was one of caution, where silence was often the safest response to controversial ideas. The house where I died became a place of pilgrimage for those who loved the truth. My story remained a powerful reminder of the cost of seeking knowledge in a restrictive world. The man who had looked at the moon with a telescope was now gone from the earth. My spirit, however, remained among the stars I had studied with such devotion. The silence of my death was filled with the echoes of my great discoveries. The world moved forward.